Hello, welcome to podcast number 6 of the Working Man podcast series. What I'm going to talk about today is an article that I posted yesterday called Sprint and Cruise. The article is a supplement to my book, Uncommon Wealth for the Working Man, which explains a simple wealth building strategy that anyone can use. Okay, there's been a series of podcasts. Like I said, this is podcast 6. So if you haven't read the book or been following along with the podcasts, then this might be a tad confusing for you. So I'd recommend you go back and do that before you listen to this. Otherwise, let's get on with it. Okay, following on from all the other investing advice we've been talking about, this one labeled Sprint and Cruise, and what it's talking about, it's pretty simple concept. When you want to invest over a long period of time, any money that you put in at the beginning of the investment is going to have an outsized return at the end. Okay, that makes sense. So a couple of analogies that I use. One, my favorite one, is if you're running a race, a long race like a marathon, and it takes a lot of training, and you've committed to a particular length of this long race. So a marathon's 42 kilometers. And what you won't find athletes doing is sprinting the first quarter, the first 5 or 10 kilometers, and then trying to run the rest of the race. They will do some sort of average speed, and they will be very consistent throughout the race. Okay, sprinting and then slowing down and maybe walking the last half is not how you win a marathon. However, in investing, it's the opposite. If you can front load the first part of the investment with more money, then it's got more time to compound over the period. So if you've got a long time horizon, which most investments should be, minimum 3, 4, 5 years, but let's say it's 10. Let's say you want to save up to buy a house, and you're thinking it's probably going to take you 10 years because you've got to work at it to get a good deposit or even a larger percentage of the house, or you're going to retire in 10 years, or your kid finishes high school and you want to save for them, and that's 10, 15 years away, then what you'll find is every dollar that you put in at the beginning will be worth many multiples at the end. So, we like to use some averages, and you put $1 in here, you get $4 out. If you start halfway through the investment, every dollar might only be worth $1.50 or $1.80 or $2. So every dollar that you can get in earlier is going to be worth more. That's common sense, but it's not talked about enough. So in the article, that's what I talk about. The long-term investments, I then go on to talk about how I pick investments. Now, it's not really the theme of the article. However, there can be something that happens at the start of the investment that might change the way you go about dollar cost averaging or splitting up your investments over this period. So normally what you do is you say, I've got $100 a week to invest, and you just really consistently put it away. However, if you pick an investment that you think might be a good long-term investment, you've looked at the fundamentals, and in my book I talk about different retailers and different companies, and it's at a low price at the time that you start your investment, then what you'll find is you get like a double whammy. Not only does that dollar multiply by 4 or 5 or 6 times, it might go up 10 or 20 times because you're buying the asset at a low ebb in price. Okay, so I talk a bit about that, and I go into the article where I talk about the stock market, for example. If you're following it and you've got a news feed on stock market, what's going on in there, Tesla or BHP or whatever it might be, what you're going to do is you're going to get fed all these articles about it. Now, most of these articles are absolute crap. They're just words on the screen that have been put there by some algorithm, And a lot of them are written by AI, and they're also written by very time-poor journalists who just have to get a series of articles or a number of articles or words out per day. Okay, and they generally, if they have any information that's useful at all, it's generally a lagging indicator. So they'll have looked at something that's happened in the price of the asset, then they'll just do a quick search on why that is. The Google and the AI bots will just scrape the internet for the most inane version or whatever's being talked about in media, which is generally some sort of hype or crap or opinion, and it's not really got anything to do with the underlying worth of the asset. So what you do is, what you find is these narratives, these articles, they feed on themselves, and they more and more and more. And then if you just Google, oh, why is the price of Amazon up or down today, you'll get fed this crap. So you've got to try and ignore that. Okay, and that's, I call it in the book, I call it X-ray vision. As a long-term investor, you've got to see through that. And the one way to do that is look at the fundamentals by using what I call megatrends. I remember a book title called Megatrend. I never read it, but I can remember. But essentially, my understanding is a megatrend is a trend that will go on for many decades and potentially centuries. So I talk about those, and I talk about effects. Like, let's go through a couple. Okay, electrification. So when we look at energy use in our society, we find that as our living, the benefits of industrialization and our living standards have risen. One of the reasons for that is the types of energy that we've used to power our lives. We started with wood burning stoves, then coal, then oil, then gas, then nuclear, and a lot of that was then condensed into electricity, which gets brought to our house, and then that can drive all these amazing appliances and heat our homes, cook food, do all that without any localized pollution. It improved our lives dramatically. That process has taken 100 years to get where it is now, probably a bit longer. We'll probably go 120 years to get where it is now, and it's still changing and it's still improving. Think now about how they're using electricity in new and exciting ways. Robotics, drones, self-driving electric cars, home automation. Whether we like it or not, it's such a useful form of energy that can be adapted to anything and is still being adapted and used. So that's a mega trend. So electricity use and the electrification of processes is just ramping up. Another thing is obviously digitization of information and services. We used to have CDs, records, encyclopedias, analog systems of record, which would break down and would be bulky and be out of date very quickly. Okay, so the digital representations of all this information is only increasing, and we are able to bring that information into our homes, into our lives, into our workplaces at a much higher rate. And then, of course, computers which digitize that information and then manipulate that information and are able to use it in different ways that we can increase the efficiency of our lives. Healthcare, longevity, that's another mega trend. Global demographics are shifting towards older societies because of extended life expectancies. So it's boosting demand for healthcare, biotech, longevity tech, retirement services, certain opportunities in pharmaceuticals, anti-aging therapies, etc. There's another mega trend that will just continue. Space commercialization, growing networks of GPS, photography, mapping, resource mining, all that sort of stuff. That's another mega trend that's going to continue on forever. Automation of processes from manual labor and mental tasks. Anything that's reduced time-consuming task continues to be introduced and improved upon. We've got the latest one, of course, is AI, which manipulates information in a new way. It's almost like the democratization of intelligence. I mean, we have to drive this thing. We know it's got shortcomings, but it's really powerful. Another one's monetary inflation. Our money keeps losing value for the last 150 years. What a dollar was able to buy back then and now, and it continues. This is the one that's probably least spoken about, but it is one of the most powerful. Our money is continually losing value. Standardization of chaotic systems, so like the metric system over all the other measurement systems and lots of other industry standards, they continue to be standardized over time and brought into use in manufacturing and other ways. Decentralization, I can go on and on. Miniaturization. Now, the reason why I bring these megatrends up is when you look at an asset that you want to buy, and you want to look at its long-term beneficial, its long-term growth potential. So if you've got a company that has a long history of utilizing some of these megatrends, okay, so, obviously I talk about Amazon all the time. I talk about Tesla. I talk about some of these big digital companies which are introducing and trying to bring this technology and these tools to us, for better or for worse. Then you've got a long runway, and you know that eventually the companies probably go up in value. You may not know exactly which one, but that's a good way to see through the short-term fear and all these articles, and but in doing so, that is your advantage. You go, okay, I can see a long-term growth potential of Amazon. I think that the digitization of retail, the specialization in retail, the delivery to the home service, it sort of intersects with another mega trend of potentially, aging demographics, where they're able to deliver stuff to people's homes, or, other things like that. Robotics. Okay, so you can see that Amazon is going to use more and more robotics, lower the cost of their labor. So we're looking at the intersection here of multiple megatrends that this company might ride. If you believe that's true, then any dip in the price of that stock or that asset is probably a good buying opportunity and will give you multiples of its average return over time. So where does that fit in? I have my favorite assets. People ask me about that. I talk about them. I like Tesla. I like Bitcoin. I like Amazon. I like Wesfarmers, Bunnings. I like some of the more basic companies who hijack some of these megatrends. And I talk about Wesfarmers. I talk about Bunnings. Although it's a retailer, and I'm not big on retailers in general, one of the things that I find that Wesfarmers does is that when they see a trend, they will hijack it and jump on the back of it and ride along. I like that. I like the fact that they're able to be flexible, and they're not going to go out the back door. They've bought online retailers in the past. They update what they sell in their shops to any new trends. Like lately, it's been not just hardware, but pets and car accessories, and they can adjust it, and they're growing. Their management has their fingers in all other pies, lithium mining, insurance, and so they're really, really able to be like a chameleon and jump on that. So that's one of the ones I find I keep coming back to, thinking I might like to buy when the price drops. There was a price drop recently, nearly 20-25%. It's now recently turned around again, but that was when I was interested. I'm like, hello, we're on here. So I just keep an eye. I just build these. I'm happy to talk more about what I invest in the future, and I'll do that in further podcasts. But these podcasts are just about techniques, righto. So let's layer that sprint and cruise technique where you try to front load your investment timeline. Now we have what we want to invest in. We maybe have a couple of particular things that we like the look of. And then as we start investing, we're okay, I'm going to invest for this particular reason. I've got my 10 or 15 or 5-year timeline, whatever it might be. And you might say, okay, I'm going to put some extra effort into finding money at the start of the timeline. So I'm going to pick up some extra shifts. I might work a second job. I might save extra hard. Maybe I go on a local holiday instead of an overseas holiday this year, and I front load that investment and I move some of those wants and desires a little bit further down the timeline. You'll have a much better outcome. And over time, when you do this more and more often, you start to change your profile and your return profile, and you'll start to improve the returns that you're getting from the standard ones. Okay, just remember, the big investment companies can't do this. They can't be that flexible where they move around, change things. They've got to, every week when money comes into the ETF, they have to buy, whether the prices of the assets are high, low, in between. They can't put it off. They have to put their money into the investment. And that's your advantage. You've got that flexibility. You can think about this stuff. All right. I do talk about one of the downsides of front loading, which is, let's say you want to buy some Wesfarmers stocks or some Bitcoin, and right after you go to purchase a lump sum, the market crashes. Well, that's part of investing. That can happen. The good news is we're not short-term investors. So that's why I always say a minimum 4 or 5 years out to even longer, is that any price drop will generally be corrected over time. All right, given it enough time. If the fundamentals of the asset or the market that you're investing is good, you'll be pulled out. But there is another benefit. Because you're flexible with your investing style, you can actually just move what you would normally have invested the second year, or you've put off some stuff, maybe move that a little bit further along and say, okay, sorry, family, we're having another holiday in Cairns or the Gold Coast. We're not going overseas again next year because this price drop is too good an opportunity not to buy assets at a bargain price again. And make a deal with them. Maybe sweeten the deal. Say, okay, if we do that, we're going to have some extra fun or whatever. But somehow, if the price drops after you've invested, I double down. If I look at the asset and I think that there's no real fundamental issue, I'm in. And it's worked out well. Okay, if you find that there is a problem, then maybe you don't invest anymore until you wait to figure out what's going on with it, or you sell, whatever. But generally that's not, once the sort of stuff that I invest in, I'm going to hold for a long, long time. There's been lots of studies conducted about the benefits of putting in a lump sum versus breaking that lump sum into smaller amounts and layering throughout, and nearly always the lump sum investment works out better. And there's a very small percentage you get that drop afterwards, and that might not be as beneficial, but over the long term you'll still be fine. It's about what you can stomach, if you can stomach that volatility. A really common way of doing that is, if you have a lump sum to invest, you do half in the lump sum and then other half your dollar cost average out, break it into small amounts and buy over time. In the I show a graph of about 150 years of market history, and I show that all the downturns have eventually turned around. Even some of the big ones like the Depression years, and other times when there has been serious downturns in the market, they've actually proven to be a good time to invest even more. So buy the dip, as it's called. Right. Now, one of the reasons why, and I touch on this in the article, why you can always be confident that at some point it's going to turn around and come back up, is one of the megatrends that I spoke about, which is inflation. So the value of your dollar is continually falling every year. We know that it's probably a lot more. I believe it's a lot more than what the government tells us. Government tells us it's 2, 3, 4%. It's probably double that, as most people feel when they go to the supermarket and buy their groceries. If a manufacturer of some good, the price of that company falls, what tends to happen is they'll pull back on the manufacturing of that item. You'll get the supply glut of whatever they're making will be reduced over time as it's sold through. Then there'll be a shortage, and also the price, the amount that costs to build that item because of inflation has increased as well. And suddenly these forces shoot and rocket the sales and therefore the company's share price out the other end. So when you get these dips, you buy them if the company is solid or the asset's solid, and what you'll find is out the other side, you'll get a slingshot effect and you'll get multiples of the return. Okay, so just remember, our goal is to build up a portfolio of investments that work for us. When our workday ends, we want to come home, have a beer, put our feet up, watch the footy, but our investments are going to keep working for us. So we want to get as much of that portfolio of assets as cheaply as possible and getting it working for us as quickly and as soon as possible. All right. So that's the goal. I'm going to do more. I've already got my next supplement ready and my next subject. I can't wait to get into it. So let's go. All right. Good to talk to you.